Hello, it's Writing Wednesday. Um, I'm at the residency period for University of California Riverside's um, Palm Desert campus. They have a low residency MFA program here, and it's um, I'm here actually because my husband's lecturing on comedy writing, so I'm in our beautiful room um, on the road again, and I have a short time to talk to you today because I have to be out of the room by 12:30. So I thought because I'm here at the residency period for low residency, and I teach in the summertime uh, at various summer workshops like the Squaw Valley Community of Writers. I'm off this year, but usually teach there every other. I thought I'd talk about critique because being in workshop, people often forget that the most important thing that they're going to do there is not about what they're going to get out of it, but what they're going to put out for other people and the critique that they're going to give. One of the things I can certainly say about being a participant in a workshop, either at home or a summer workshop or an MFA program, is that you get the most out of other people's, when other people are up, you're going to get the most out of their critique or how they are critiqued than you will out of your own, because usually you're so stunned and emotionally overwrought as people are critiquing your work that the best you can do is just write everything down and sort it out later. I'm a crier. So when I'm teaching workshop, I always tell people, if you're a crier, don't worry about it. It's very intense and emotional, and it's just part of the deal. So don't pay too much attention to it. The most important thing to remember when you're critiquing someone's work, is to critique in such a way that they can hear what you're saying. Because the point of good critique is not to count coup on that person, to pin them to the wall, or show them everything that's wrong with their work and make them cry and run out of the room. It's not to make you look good. The point of critique is to help another person. And if what you're going to say is not going to help them, if it's just going to make them feel bad, and perhaps you can have your little smirky session, just don't do it. Don't do it, because they're not going to hear what you're saying. You might as well just go talk to a wall. So keep it to yourself if you don't think it's going to be helpful to the other person. So think about that when you're giving critique. What I often do when I get student work or friends' work, or anybody's work, is think about the one or two things that you think will help them the most, rather than giving them a big list of things to think about, because it's hard to figure out the weighting of things. If there's like two really important points and then a bunch of little ones, the little ones diminish from your central offering to that person. So try to stick to, if you could tell them one thing that would make their work 80% better, stick with that one thing or two things. I do that when I critique someone. Try to stick to a small number of things. So a lot of you are going to summer conferences this year, or you're in an MFA program, or you're taking an extension class. The critique is more important actually than what you're going to get out of it for yourself in your own work, only indirectly. will it go to your own work? I assign little exercises every week. I've talked about that at the beginning of these Writing Wednesdays. An exercise called I call it the word, where you take a word and you write 2 pages double spaced based on that word. And I would have students turn it in, and they would mark it up. Then on the following week, I would collect, and I would mark up and mark it up myself. Then it would go back to the person who did the critique, so they could see what they missed, and then they would give it back to the author. And I found that people, the grades for the critique came up faster than the grades for the writing. People can see problems in other people's work before they see it in their own. So in critiquing other people, you are already becoming a better writer. It's just much easier to see problems in somebody else's work. And then you go, oh, I do that too. Who knew? So you're not there to learn, you're there to to offer your critique, and by refining your critique, you are also refining your own skills as a writer. When I'm in workshop, I can remember being in workshop, as a young writer, struggling writer. Everybody's always struggling. What am I talking about? But as, earlier in my experience as a writer, being in workshop, and say you have 12 people in workshop, inevitably there will be 2 or 3 people, say in a workshop of 12, there will be 2 or 3 people who really get what you're doing. And their critique will be aimed at making it more of what the author wants it to be. That's the most generous kind of critique, is when you can see what the author is trying to do, what is kind of might still be in potential form in that work. But if you can see where they're going, what they do well, and where their interest is, where the interest in the book or the offering, whatever you're looking at, a scene, and help them notice, what they're good at, what's going well, and then give them help in making it more what it wants to be, more where they're going. If they're giving you a sci-fi piece and you don't like sci-fi and you're trying to turn it into a conventional literary story, you are not helping. So you might as well just shut up and let the other people who get the story talk. Really, if there's something that, in every workshop there are 2 or 3 people who get what you're doing, they like what you're doing, and their critique is always helping you move towards where that story wants to go. Always listen to those people. Then there'll be people who just don't like what you do. They just don't like you. I mean, not you as a person, but they just don't like your work. They don't like your conception of the world. They don't like, your pacing. They don't like you. And it's really important to not listen to those people. Just kind of close the curtains. And in your mind, you're thinking, go away. And outside, in exterior, you're going, well, thank you for that. Thank you for critique. You don't have to argue with them. Just let it go. Close the curtains. And then there'll be people in the middle, like probably about 6 or 7, who sometimes are right, sometimes are wrong. So that can be very confusing. So always listen to those 2 or 3 people who really get what you're doing. Not the people who like everything and are just real softball kind of people, but the people who generally recognize what you're doing. Like it, want it to see it more being itself. That's the kind of critique that you should listen to. And when you're offering critique, think about that. If it's not going to be valuable to the person, if you don't really like what they're doing, but you see something that would help them 100%, then go for that. But always remember that it's about helping that person make the story more what they wanted. And that would attract the person who would like that kind of story. Let's see. So what are the things that you look for when you're critiquing someone's work? I have a series of marks that I make on people's work, and it's basic. It's pretty simple. I put a circle. Let's see. I'll turn this around so you can actually see my writing. Turn it around. Here we go. So I'll put a circle around phrases that, let's say this is not actual prose, but I'll put a circle around something that I have problems with. Say this was a phrase that I stumbled over. I put a circle around a whole paragraph maybe that just seems unnecessary. Then if there's a cliche, I'll put a circle and a little C at the top. And we've talked about what a cliche is. Often people don't see it in their own work. So circle cliches, circle anything that's problematic. And then I underline things that are working, things I like. And I'll put a check mark if there's something I like. Then there are these marks that I use. There's a suitcase like that, or a door like that. And that means unpack it. There's more there. You're kind of the person needs to develop what they've suggested a door, but they haven't opened it. There's more there, so you put that in the margin. So those are like the basic marks that I'll use. And when I do workshop, I have people read their things aloud, and we mark on the page as they go. You know, you start to really be able to see what's going on in the work, and that's super helpful. So you check things. I don't have a physical checklist, but in my mind I sort of have a little checklist when I go through and look at people's work to critique it. And you could actually make a list and check your own stuff before other human beings see it. And my checklist looks something like this, you know. Is there a sensual world? Do you use all the senses somewhere in there? Are there layers of landscape? I did a landscape writing Wednesday. I've done a sense writing Wednesday. You can see what I mean by using landscape, using the senses. You know, do I do the 3 levels of landscape? The distance, the master shot, the personal scale, and the intimate scale. Do people touch things? Is there physical contact? I check the verbs, you know, is it the terrible 20, or have they put any effort into making verbs that are more specific and exciting? I look for movement in the piece. Movement, we talked about that in scene and story. I look for the change. Is there any change? Does anything happen? Can you clarify the movement of what happens? Maybe there's a lot of extraneous things. Maybe there's not really a scene yet, and they need to have something happen. So you check for scene. You make sure that all the characters are their own separate people. You don't have 3 people who are all the same. You know, if you have 3 sorority girls, there should be 3 different sorority girls, and one might be the good girl, maybe we should go home. One could be the kind of provocative one who starts fights, and one could be, you know, I don't know, the secret punk rocker who'd like to just shove it all and go off and do something else. But make sure that, you know, so check, are the characters unique? Do they have, unique needs, wants, how they serve in a scene? The dialogue, can you tell who's talking? Does everybody have their own voice? But especially you'll look for conflict, you'll look for language. We'll talk about dialogue some other time because it's a longer discussion before they fling me out of my hotel room. So we'll do dialogue on another day. But make sure if you see dialogue marching down the page with no descriptions, no thoughts, no gestures, no landscape, dialogue scene is another kind of scene. So if it doesn't have the other elements of scene, and it doesn't have the other elements of prose writing, that's something to look for. I call that strip dialogue. They need dialogue scene is still a scene, and you have to embody it. So watch for bad dialogue, and definitely to watch for conflict. In many workshops, there is someone who is louder than other people. They tend to dominate the discussion. You have to be careful not to start bending and adding, and like what he said, if it doesn't really jibe with what you're saying. I'm always never, it's like, how do you handle people's feelings? I try very hard not to, you don't want to blow smoke up anybody's ass. If the story isn't great, if you didn't call your friend at home and say, man, I just read the most amazing story, do not tell the writer that it's an amazing story. That does not help. You can say what you liked about it, but, the softball thing is counterproductive. The people who are the softball critiquers might as well not show up at all as far as being helpful to the author. And they don't learn either, because they don't learn how to really think about a story, analyze it, and find the thing that would really, really help that story. So be very careful about praising work that is not really worth praising. It's a start. It's a start. It doesn't have to be great, but don't tell them that it's great if it's not. Let's see, how am I doing on time I have about 5 minutes before they throw me out of here. So at Squaw Valley, where I was a participant, they had various leaders. Every day you have a new leader. You have an editor, you have an agent, you have a writer. If you're ever in a workshop where you have an editor, I remember we got this, we had, everybody fell over the big writers, but often the big writers don't necessarily have the best critique. Often people, they can't teach you how to be them. I certainly knew people who were in David Foster Wallace's workshop at Pomona, and he was a very interesting person. But you can't. It doesn't rub off, So be careful when you're with people who are really, your heroes. It doesn't rub off. What I discovered was some of the best teachers were the editors. And they're sometimes not very glamorous people, but they really know what they're talking about. Agents will often talk about markability and likability and all that. But your editors and many writers are very, very good at spotting things in people's work. But just know that sometimes they'll just talk about how to be them, and you can't be them. So, watch your heroics, watch, being too mesmerized by the glamour. If you meet writers at workshops or you're in lectures and they ask for questions, don't ask about the business. Poets and writers will tell you about the business. Think of literary questions that you really could use an interesting answer to. writing questions. Let's see. Yeah, group dynamics are everywhere, and keep track of that. It's you're not in workshop to make friends. Of course you're going to make friends. Of course you're going to make friends. It's like you're not in an army to make friends, but you make friends in the army. You're in workshop to become a better writer and push it. And if there's somebody in your workshop who really knows things, I've had students at SQUA who have just been so insightful, so great. Talk to them later, talk to them after, really, get the benefit of what people know. But always when you're critiquing on the page, look for kind of a list of things to keep an eye on, and don't let a cliche go by, ever. The one thing that will make it 10 times better is always great. And watch out for those loudest voices. Don't just sort of go with the tide. If there's something that you see, you have your time, use your time to tell the person the one thing you think would be better. And if you hate the story and you don't see anything that's going to make it any better, just pass. Say, this is not my kind of story, so I'm going to let the time go for somebody who will be more valuable. Competitive aspects. It's not about competition. Everybody has to pull water from their own well. Everybody has to develop themselves as a writer. So don't be intimidated by the louder people. Develop your own insights and instincts. Listen to everybody. You'll learn a lot. So anyway, they're about to throw me out of my room. Welcome. Hope you have a wonderful summer, and you're in good workshops, and you're really adding to them and not taking energy away from them by trying to be a star. You'll be a star anyway, but you'll be a star, and people will appreciate your contribution rather than rolling their eyes and going, oh God, not that guy again. Okay. All right. And we'll talk to you next week. Bye.